Hello everyone, this is Gene from NYC, and well, it's 11:40 something, so good morning, almost afternoon on this lovely Saturday. I don't know about where you guys are, my 24, I think it is now, subscribers, but it's cold here in New York City. It is freezing effing cold. But fortunately, I'm in a nice toasty room. And I will be doing another video, my, I guess now, third comic review, while I vent and discuss what I like and don't like about the following comic that I'm going to review. As you can see, this is the Reza Ramon. I want to say it like the way Howard Finkel used to say it, rolling the R's. Reza Ramon, oozing machismo picture that I used in the Captain Marvel #1 review. I figured, hey, let me bust this out because if there's something that modern comics is missing, it is that oozing machismo, man. That and young Scott Hall was attractive in that, rugged, bad boy way, which is why he was always called the bad guy. So I will admit, this is not the best picture of him. There are better pictures out there, but hey, I kind of had a crush on him when I was a kid. So hey, why not? Him and Shawn Michaels. Shawn was so handsome when he was young. I have like an old HBK shirt. I'll probably make a video with that one soon enough. If I have to read and review, or at least tell you guys what I think about some poor quality comics, I can at least look at hot dudes as I do it. I mean, why not? So anyhow, the comic I will be discussing this end of the morning going into the afternoon is Iceman #5. Iceman, written by Sina Grace. Yeah, can we get Sina Grace off of Iceman? The more I read Sina Grace's work on Iceman, the more I see reviews of his Iceman comics, the more I realize that he's the Kelly Sue DeConnick of Bobby Drake. Meaning that just as Kelly Sue DeConnick rebooted and ruined Carol Danvers when she became Captain Marvel, Sina Grace, in my estimation, rebooted and ruined Iceman, ruined Bobby Drake when he started writing for him. Because here's the problem: if you don't know, if you may not know, Bobby Drake, his sexuality, I believe a little over a year ago, his sexuality, which had been heterosexual, he had been straight for years, for decades, was retconned. Jean Grey basically took an errant thought, mind raped him, and then had him be homosexual. She made him gay, basically. She took a thought, ran with that thought, turned him gay. And now, ever since, stories involving Iceman, especially when they're written by Sina Grace, are all about Bobby being gay and Bobby coming out of the closet and Bobby dating. It's not a superhero story anymore. It's a story about the gay superpowered ice-themed version of Jack McFarland from Will and Grace, who may or may not actually be Sina Grace himself. Now I want to be clear. I have no issue with a gay member of the X-Men. Fine, whatever. I don't care. I don't think it's right to just flip his sexuality. That I think is wrong. They just should have went with a character like, say, North Star. There we go. Who's been canonically gay for years. I think he either got married a few years ago or something like that. But no. They take a mainstream X-Men character and decide to make him gay. Because you know that this would not fly if you did the reverse. If, for example, you took, say, Mystique, right, who's been canonically bisexual for decades, and even her soulmate is a woman, right, Destiny, who she raised Rogue with. If you took her, had Jean Grey mess with her head, and then make her a raging heterosexual, right, who only wants the D, only wants boys, people would flip. But it's perfectly fine to do the reverse and basically sexuality flip Iceman. because reasons, because representation, which is not real or sincere representation, because all Sina Grace has done is write his Iceman stories as just poor, in my opinion, offensive caricatures of gay people and gay culture. I mean, even in this, in Iceman #5, there's a character called Shade, who does nothing. I was actually going to go on a long rant about Shade and about how I dislike putting a what's I put? I guess I would say putting I'm trying to think of the word for it. But I was basically gonna go on this rant on how you don't take something that is unrelated to being a superhero and make it the theme of the superhero. Like, for example, Kurt, for example, right? Kurt Wagner, Nightcrawler, is a devout Catholic. Many people know this about Kurt. But Kurt's superhero persona of Nightcrawler is not about being a Catholic. It's about being a superhero. And the look, the name, emphasize his superhero qualities, right? He doesn't go out there, in a priest robe, with a giant cross on his chest, reading Bible verses trying to fight crime. He fights crime by using his mutant abilities. He doesn't, when it comes to being a superhero, he doesn't lead with his religious faith, right? He leads with his superhero qualities. And I was going to rant about how leading with Shade being a drag queen instead of leading with Shade's abilities is the wrong way to establish the character as a superhero. But honestly, Shade does so little in the book. Shade's in there for maybe 2 panels, just making puns. There's one pun where Shade notices Emma Frost and her brother running toward some problem, and she quips that she better follow them to see what other hellfire Emma's stirring up. I'm like, ha 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 ha. Yes, we know. Emma is the currently she's the Black Queen of the Hellfire Club. I always remember her as the White Queen because I'm just used to the white costume. But ha ha ha. She's part of the Hellfire Club. Hey, do you remember the Hellfire Club? Are you old enough to remember the Hellfire Club? And then there's another one where I think Emma's brother Christian is about to be jumped by some noob. And I'll explain why in the review why I'm calling the guy who was about to jump him a noob. And she just Shade comes up and just I don't even know what Shade did to the guy, but she just comes up and she's like, I'm just throwing shade, Henny. I'm like, first of all, Henny's a drink. I thought the term was honey or hunty, something to that effect. I've never known Henny to be a substitute for the word honey, or some sort of exaggeration for it. When I hear the word Henny, I think alcohol. That's just me. Maybe it's just how I grew up. But when someone says Henny, I'm thinking drinking. But again, that's just me. So let me get to the story itself, which is, like sadly many comics today, just vapid. It's not really a story, to be honest. There's not much of a plot. There's a little bit of fighting, but it's just stuff happening, right? It could be like a news report. A news report is not a superhero tale. A news report, assuming the news report is honest, just tells you what happened and where and what the outcome is. That's not a story. That's not a tale. It's just a recalling of an event. And this is what this comic is. It's just a bunch of events happening in a certain sequence. It's not a story. There's no moral here. There's no purpose. There's no greater theme driving it. It's just a very unfortunate series of events. So this book starts off, for some odd reason, with a flashback to Bobby's to a romantic moment that Bobby had with his boyfriend of all of 2 minutes, Judah. Basically, he wants to go for a dirt bike ride with him. Judah says no at first. Then they end up dirt bike riding and racing over several beaches. Then they're shown on a beach, chilling and relaxing. And Bobby admits that he likes it here, and he thanks Judah for giving him this moment of peace, because when he's at home in New York, right, Bobby sort of has to be the center of attention, basically, and he admits that this is because inside he's very lonely and sad, and that Judah makes him calm. That's actually very nice and very introspective. Here's the problem: it has bunk all to do with the story itself. This moment's never mentioned again. Jude is never mentioned again. Even the idea of, Bobby being this sort of sad clown, right, who puts on a happy face and has to be the center of attention to hide his loneliness, is never really addressed again. It's mentioned, but it never goes anywhere with it. So, the actual story itself, after that little flashback that means nothing and goes nowhere and contributes in no way, the actual story starts starts with Bobby and Mr. Sinister, who somehow became Count Dracula, fighting. So, Bobby had supposedly been destroyed in one of Mr. Sinister's science container things, because Sinister kidnapped Bobby, hoping to be able to extract DNA data so he could create a bunch of ice golems. I know Mr. Sinister is like a creepy scientist and stuff like that, but it just sounds too, I guess, plain for Sinister. It's weird. But anyway, so issue 4 had closed out with it seeming like Bobby's been shattered by Mr. Sinister. Actually, what Sinister shattered was a clone. And the funny thing is that if you saw just some guys review of Iceman number 4, he even said toward the end of the video that he believed it was just going to be a clone. And how does this book open up? Showing that he was absolutely right. Thank you, Sina Grace, for proving a critic right. That it indeed was a clone that Sinister had captured and shattered. So then Sinister just starts chucking all this very expensive scientific equipment at Bobby, trying to hit him. I don't understand why in the world he's chucking this very, very expensive equipment at him. It just doesn't seem like something Sinister would do. And it's not as if Sinister is depicted as some sort of like, violent, uncontrollable rage that could sort of justify it. He's just chucking all this big, heavy, expensive equipment at Bobby. And Bobby's trying to attack him. It's your standard superhero fight. So then the story moves on back to the Mutant Pride Parade. And Nightcrawler pops in for a moment. He talks to 2 guards. And, he just says, hey, hi guys. And they say, hey, Nightcrawler, nice to see you. And Crawler says that he's just doing a perimeter sweep. And he bamps out again. And before the smoke that he leaves behind can even clear, these 2 security guards, which if you're wondering, yes, they're white. These 2 security guards are shown to be actually anti-mutant noobs. And the reason why I'm calling them noobs is not because they're anti-mutant, but because of how they look. If you see them in the comic, they basically look like Noob Saibot from the Mortal Kombat games. Their clothing looks like a cheap black ninja suit from like Mortal Kombat 1. So they look like Noob Saibot if he had been in the very first Mortal Kombat game, and then they're wearing these helmets that basically look like a gray and black version of Magneto's helmet. So imagine that. Imagine somebody wearing a gray and black version of Magneto's helmet and wearing a cheap knockoff of of a ninja costume from the first Mortal Kombat game, painted black. These are our baddies for the Mutant Pride parade part. And this is why I call them noobs, because they look like noob Cybot. But I like noob too much as I am and actually a big fan of the Mortal Kombat games, or at least the original games. I can't call them noob Cybot, but I can certainly call them noobs. So that's what I'm calling these characters that are basically cannon fodder, right? Noobs. They have no personality. The only thing they are there for is to be the I guess what you would call the acceptable target, right? They're anti-mutant. Before the Nightcrawler smoke even dissipates, it's can't stand mutants, anti-mutant. You know, they have stinking mutie. It's pretty much what he says. I'm not trying to copy Yellow Flash. That is literally what the guy said. He's like, stinking mutant. So this is all that these guys are there for, to be, acceptable targets. It's okay to, beat them up. They're dressed in black and they hate mutants. Get them. It's sad and it's stupid. So while this violence is going on at the Mutant Pride Parade, it goes back to the fight between Sinister. Excuse me. It goes back to the fight between Sinister and Iceman. Sinister still chucking stuff at him. Iceman tries what is called in certain anime and manga circles as talk no jutsu, thanks to Naruto. And Bobby says that he sees himself in Sinister, that Sinister is arrogant, and the root word in Latin for arrogance is loneliness, and all Sinister really wants after 200 years of life is a friend. And I'm just thinking, so you're saying that Mr. Sinister is really Greed from Full Metal Alchemist? Is that it? But then, nothing ever comes of that, right? Nothing is ever explored with Bobby or Sinister about, whether his motivations are, driven for a need to have friends. Unlike with Greed in Full Metal Alchemist, where there actually was this character development where Greed realized just that in the end, all he ever truly wanted and valued was true friendship. See, Japanese manga, actual storytelling, and character development. Current year American comics. Don't know what the hell that is. It's like a foreign language to current year writers, sadly. Character development? Exploration of themes? What in the hell is that? What language are you speaking? I'm speaking the language of good writing. Thank you very much. Now anyway, so it goes back to the Mutant Pride Parade again. It's basically going back and forth between these two fights, Sinister and Bobby, and then the violence at the Mutant Pride Parade. And we're introduced to Emma Frost again. She had been she and Bobby had teamed up in I think issue 2 or issue 3 of this mini series, and we encounter her and her brother at the Mutant Pride Parade. That had been previously established in issue 4, I think it was. And then there's this panel where they're buying a shirt. There's this like mutant green, cute little green mutant selling shirts and purses and whatnot at a stall. And here's the thing. Here's the thing that I think is a big problem with comics and with entertainment in general. The shirts that the mutant is selling are Mutant Pride shirts. This panel actually really stood out to me, but for the wrong reasons. It stood out to me because it was basically, in my estimation, pointing out the commercialization of identity. This person is selling t-shirts for Mutant Pride. That's it. This person literally is trying to make money off of a particular identity, that of being a mutant. And it is just like what we see in today's world. People trying to make money to merchandise your identity. trying to merchandise your race, your sexuality. And in my opinion, when you try to merchandise something, and again, I'm not saying you can't have pride in these things. You certainly can. But when it goes from having pride and wanting to express that pride to now just wanting to commercialize it and make money, you cheapen it, in my estimation. When it goes from something you are passionate about to something you are trying to make money off of, you cheapen this supposed pride you have in your race or your sexuality or your religion or whatever the heck it is. You cheapen it. It's not something you should be trying to make money off of, in my estimation. I mean, I don't go around telling people my race or my sexual orientation. I have no issue with my race or my orientation, but I'm not looking to make money off of it. I'm not gonna stand at a stall, right, and say, "Hey, get your straight shirts here. Get your straight shirts here. Are you a heterosexual? Here, pick up this shirt." It cheapens it. It's just so cheap and insulting, in my personal opinion. So that panel stood out to me. And then afterward, Emma somehow senses that there's a commotion going on. Her brother wants to get into the fray, and then she says, "No, we're not getting involved." Then her brother tells her that while she can, tell him how to use his powers, she can't tell him how to, or rather, she can't tell him who to use the powers on. This is my problem with, how do I put this? He's basically saying, I get to be judge, jury, and executioner. And even when Emma, in public, says that he had just killed their father, and she basically gives him an ultimatum. She says, you killed Dad. I helped you deal with that. I cleaned up that mess. You are pretty much going to do what I say. And he says, here's what her brother says. Again, the brother she just said in public. I mean, the little mutant selling the t-shirts even, says, like, did you say murder? So again, people can hear this. She just said that her brother killed their father. And she's trying to, basically give him an ultimatum. And his response to this is, I don't want to feel shame for who I am. I don't want to feel shame for my powers. Shame for the powers that allow you to kill somebody. You should feel shame, you fool. You should feel shame. You should feel shame for the fact that you killed a man. That's what you should feel shame for. Even people who have justifiably taken a life, right, in self-defense or in defense of another person's life. Even they feel shame and feel guilt because it's not healthy to kill people. It's not something you're supposed to feel good about. But he doesn't want to feel shame for his abilities. The type of reasoning the supposedly good guy characters have. And instead of Emma, pulling him aside and pretty much going, Christian, what the hell's wrong with you? Do you realize what you're saying? No. Emma goes, well, you know what? Getting your feelings out might just actually help you. And then him and Emma and him go run to where the noobs are attacking the Morlocks. These are supposed to be the heroes of the story. Not the anti-heroes. Not the people passing by and reluctantly helping out. But the heroes of the story. Again, Emma just hardly tried to rein in her brother who essentially just said that I don't want to feel shame for my powers, aka I don't want to feel shame for the fact that I killed a man, and I should have the right to, attack whoever I want. I should be judge, jury, and executioner. And no one thinks this is a problem. Emma actually encourages this. And this is supposed to be like a more good guy interpretation of Emma Frost, and she's encouraging the brother who just outright said these very disturbing words, right? Right, so we can see the dude's messed up in the head, but instead of taking him aside and telling him, Christian, do you realize what you're saying? She encourages us. What a wonderful big sister she is. I mean, she's just big sister of the year. Big sister 2019, Emma Frost, the White Queen. Anyhow, then there's some more fighting going on. Shade, again, tells a stupid joke. And then it goes back to... what's his face? It goes back to Bobby and Mr. Sinister again. And Bobby basically thinks he's Sub-Zero, tries to freeze Mr. Sinister. It doesn't work. Sinister chucks more of that very expensive science equipment at him. Bobby then does his best Wolverine impersonation and stabs Sinister through the upper arms and through the shoulders. Turns into a giant ice griffin with Sinister caught on the talons, because again, he's just been stabbed. And somehow Bobby's able to fly in this ice griffin form. I don't know how, because I would imagine that if you're going to turn into a giant ice griffin, that it would weigh a ton. But somehow he's able to fly. I've never known Bobby to have the ability of flight. Isn't that why he uses his ice slide? Because he can't fly? But somehow he flies all the way up into the sky. Then he has a moment of clarity when he says that he doesn't know how to kill Sinister. And even if he knew how to kill Sinister, it's not his place to. I was like, oh, wow, Bobby actually having a reflective moment. Then the moment is ruined by Bobby chucking Mr. Sinister up into the atmosphere. He chucks Sinister up into the atmosphere. After saying, you know what, it's not my place to take your life. He decides, well, I'm just going to throw you up into the atmosphere where you could burn, right? Or, die of asphyxiation. Now, of course, we all know that that's not going to kill Mr. Sinister. But it isn't the point that it would kill Mr. Sinister. It's the point that this is how Bobby thinks. Let me have, or at least this is the way he thinks under Sina Grace. Let me have a moment of introspection when I realize that, taking another person's life, even if they're evil, is not mine to take. And then let me just throw them into a situation where if they were not who they are, right, if they were a regular person or a regular mutant, it would kill them. Because again, Marvel Comics, 2019, where apparently, morals just don't matter. Who needs morals? Who needs moral tales, right? Who needs that? Who needs, to be reminded that taking people's lives just because you want to is bad? Apparently not us, right? We don't need that in today's stories. That's why nobody's buying comic books these days. So anyhow, after that, Kitty and Bobby have a brief conversation. Kitty demands to know why Bobby didn't tell her about Mr. Sinister. Bobby pretty much says, well, you've had so much on your plate, especially after your wedding. I didn't want to burden you. In theory, that's actually quite kind of him. In the reality, it's stupid, and I'll tell you why. The wedding he's referencing is the wedding that Kitty herself called off. That Kitty herself pulled a runaway bride on. If you're not familiar, back last summer in June, July, there was an issue of X-Men Gold. I think it was X-Men Gold number 30, where Kitty and her longtime boyfriend Colossus were finally gonna get married. And this was been important because in issues prior to that, Kitty had actually subverted tradition, and she was the one who proposed to Peter, to Colossus. So they're gonna get married, and then as Peter's about to put the ring on her finger, Kitty phases her hand and then admits that she can't get married, and she runs off. So she's the one who proposed to her groom. She's the one who wanted to get married, and then she's the one who does the runaway bride thing. And yet, she's the one Bobby is saying, well, I know what happened at the wedding. I didn't want to worry you. She's not the one who deserves Bobby's sympathy. You know who deserves Bobby's sympathy? Colossus, who is still heartbroken. He was the one who was left behind. He's the one who had his entire world shattered when she did that. Not him. I'm not saying that Kitty didn't hurt or anything like that. She did. No doubt. But she's the one who caused the problem. She's the one who caused both her own and Peter's heartbreak. So why in the hell? Why the hell is she the one getting Iceman's sympathy? He should be going up to his bro. He should be going up to Colossus saying, you know what, man? I know she did you wrong. But, let's go out, have some drinks. We can go to a movie or whatever. Let's just hang out, right? Get your mind off things. But no. It's let's all, gather around and feel bad for Kitty. Because, Colossus is perfectly fine, big, strong Russian who just had his heart broken. He doesn't need help. He doesn't need camaraderie and friendship. Let's just all, rally around Kitty. She's the one who needs our help the most, despite being the person who caused the problem. So anyway, long story short, this comic actually didn't piss me off too much because I wasn't expecting much. But again, it's just further proof of the poor quality of comics today. And exactly why I'm not purchasing them. I'm not purchasing comics again, at least mainstream comics, until I get actual stories with actual growth and character development. So yeah, that's it. That's the review. It's not terribly long. Alright, so have a good Saturday. I don't know if I'll make another video this weekend. I might not, don't know. Enjoy your day. Bye.